Good evening. Welcome to the Monday, January 22nd meeting of the Albion City Council. If you have a phone or electronic device, I'd ask that you place it on silent, and I call this meeting to order. We will begin with a moment of silence. Thank you. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Domingo, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Barnes. Reed.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Lawler.
Here.
Spicer. French.
Here.
And Mayor Brown.
Here. Are there any comments from council this evening? Councilmember French.
Thank you, Mayor. Just an announcement regarding the passing of an Albion native, Dr. John Nicholas Vernakis, now of Charleston, South Carolina, age 78, husband to Karen Ann Monroe Vernakis, died on Wednesday, January 17, 2018. Why is that important? Nicholas grew up in Albion. He's the son of Nicholas John Vernakis and Payanota or Pota Vernakis. Nick and Pota were immigrants from Greece, and they opened up Nick's Lunch in 1942 on South Superior Street in downtown Albion. Many businesses thrived at this time in support of the Detroit automotive manufacturers. It was a great place to grow up. John attended Albion High School, excelled in academics, as well as played several sports, including football and tennis. His academic efforts earned him a full scholarship to attend Albion College, where he completed a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry, Physics, and Math in 1961. He was on the varsity football team, a member of Sigma Nu fraternity, and was student council president. He married a woman he met at Albion College, Karen Monroe, and they've been married since 1961. In more recent years, after getting a PhD from Cornell University in physical biochemistry in 1968, he became a faculty member at Syracuse University, doing postdocs at Harvard and at MIT, and then in '85 became a professor at Dartmouth College, before settling at the Medical University of South Carolina as professor of medicine, where he was until 1995. He was an innovator, an inventor of a great many things, including medical products that helped promote wound healing and hemostasis. At the time of his passing, he was the publisher of 150 scholarly works, inventor of 25 or more U.S. and foreign patents, and was the first South Carolina inductee into the National Academy of Inventors. So I just wanted to share that an Albion native who grew up in Albion went on to a very successful life in this world and has since passed. So I'm sure our more senior members of the city of Albion remember Nick's in downtown Albion. I've been able to talk to a number of those folks in the recent days since John's passing, and they remember fondly that restaurant and what it meant in downtown. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from council this evening? Okay. I just want to acknowledge that definitely on social media and then also on television and things have been coverage of the Superior Street situation. We are aware of that and working with MDOT to find solutions to address that. So I want to make sure that residents know that we are aware of that and are addressing that. I want to thank the Albion 4-H. I had the opportunity to chaperone a group of kids to a Michigan State women's basketball game this past Saturday. It was very fun and was glad that I was asked to attend. So I wanted to say thank you to Sherry Grice and Marquetta Frost for that. Seeing no other comments, we're going to Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I have more of a question than a comment.
Okay.
Regarding Superior Street, and you mentioned that we've been in discussion with the state about it, but I know we've been in discussion for over a week now. Is there any update, any updated information that we have? Do we know anything?
I think they are, from what I know they're looking at some, I guess, other communities that have brick roads and seeing how those are constructed relative to ours. So I can't have I don't have anything technical right now, because that's something I have to talk to the manager about. But I do know that it's being worked on. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilmember French.
I might just add a few words to that question, Councilwoman Brown. I talked to Greg Finola just randomly because he happened to be walking and inspecting last week. He's perplexed as much as we are as to why it failed. But you might notice in front of Ludington Center and along that first block, there are cones placed on the side of the road. So my guess is that as soon as they have a plan, when things dry out, they'll be moving. I can't imagine they would put those things out now if they were gonna wait until March or April to take action. So my guess is that action will be happening sooner rather than later. No details, because Greg followed the instructions. I did everything they told me they were gonna do, and
Oh, well,
Jim's gonna.
I know, yeah.
Hey, there's the guy.
Jim Leonardson, Director of Public Safety, Public Services. Several years in that department as well. My understanding is the manager has extended an invitation to MDOT to attend one of our future meetings and once they have a determination on what they feel the failure issue is, to address not only council, but the community as well. So we can look forward to that, and hopefully we'll get some answers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Manager report. Okay.
Okay, so Cheryl has a terrible flu. I'm Assistant City Manager Stacy Levin filling in. As a response to the hepatitis A outbreak that has spread to Calhoun County, the city has made provisions to offer city employees hepatitis A vaccines as well as flu shots. Mayor and Council, MSU Extension has invited you, along with other community leaders, to attend a civic democracy kickoff meeting on Friday, January 26th at 1 p.m. at Tennant Hall. This past Saturday, I had the pleasure of attending the Financial Empowerment Fair, and I want to congratulate the organizers on a very successful event. The event, hosted by Homestead Savings Bank with support from Star Commonwealth and various sponsors, and organized by Linda Lanou with help from the AmeriCorps Vista team, offered workshops to help residents with information on home ownership, mortgage lending, credit repair, credit counseling, budgeting, investment, and retirement planning. So congratulations, it was a great event. So in 2 weeks, on Saturday, February 3rd, fingers crossed that we have the snow we need, the City of Albion's Department of Public Safety and Recreation Department, in partnership with the Greater Albion Chamber of Commerce, is hosting the 28th Annual Cardboard Classic Sled Race. There is a sled design competition as well as downhill races. Registration begins at 10 a.m. at the Victory Park Sledding Hill. And this weekend, a week before the February 3rd sled race, there is a sled building and pre-registration event this Saturday, January 27th, 2018, at the Albion Community Center located at Marshall Opportunity High School cafeteria. Participants can come down anytime between 9 a.m. and 12 p.m. to pick up free sled building supplies, build a sled, and/or pre-register. For more information on the Cardboard Classic Sled Race and Sled Building Pre-Registration event, folks can visit the city's webpage or the Albion Cardboard Classic Facebook page, as well as, I believe, the Chamber's page as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. No presentations, no public hearings, public comments. Persons addressing the city council shall limit their comments to no more than 3 minutes. And we ask that you observe proper decorum. Please state your name and address. And this is for comments on tonight's agenda.
Yes, this is an agenda item. My name is Frank Pasick, 900 South Eaton Street. The pavement on South Eaton Street between Mechanic and West Oak Streets continues to deteriorate. This is part of the official MDOT M99 detour route, which will go into effect again this spring for several weeks. During this past summer, as part of the detour route, heavy semi-trucks pounded the concrete pavement under the asphalt, which cracked it and caused it to sink. In the past few weeks, it has only gotten worse. Some repair asphalt was later applied, but not enough. There are new holes and dips in the pavement which have formed in the last couple of weeks as the ice has thawed. In addition, there is a water line leak which has developed and has not been repaired. Last spring, as MDOT was repairing the detour route, they had the Calhoun County Road Commission come and pave North Eaton Street up the hill from the railroad tracks and portions of Irwin Avenue. Since significant damage has been caused to the Mechanic to Oak Street block of South Eaton Street, I feel MDOT should be contacted to make pavement repairs to this block before it is opened again as an official detour route. Furthermore, the city of Albion needs to raise that unlevel and very low manhole cover at the intersection with Oak Street that has caused the street at that point to take a significant dip, causing a bump, thus furthering an uneven driving experience on South Eaton Street. On a related street topic, which has already been brought about tonight, I feel that because of what has happened to our downtown brick street, it is apparent that this is not going to work. The bricks should be removed in the driving lanes and asphalt applied. The bricks can remain in the parking area for historical purposes, give a nice brick accent to our town. However, the practical needs of normal traffic should take precedence over historical concerns here in the 21st century. Our street is not a museum. It's a street. Since it appears that the bricks will have to be taken up anyway for repairs, I would encourage the council to pass a resolution and encourage MDOT to repave the driving lanes with asphalt and put an end to our constant bumps here in downtown Albion. Thank you.
Is there any further public comment this evening on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the consent calendar, approval of study session minutes from January 11th, 2018. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved in second. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Okay. Items for individual discussion. Item A, request approval, resolution 2018-03, to approve intergovernmental agreement with the City of Marshall for continued operation of the Albion Marshall Connector from 2018 to 2020.
So moved.
So there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Sure. Mayor and Council, the Albion Marshall Connector currently provides curb-to-curb public transportation between Albion and Marshall to the residents of both municipalities. The City Council requested that a more sustainable solution be found to address the funding for this service. The City Administration has met with several community partners who have each agreed to provide $3,000 in funding for 3 years for the continued operations of the Albion Marshall Connector. This resolution approves extending the intergovernmental agreement with the City of Marshall for the continued operation of the Albion Marshall Connector through June 30th, 2020, and approved appropriating $3,000 annually for 3 years towards the AMC operations.
Thank you.
Sure.
Is there any question or discussion from council? Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So I before the meeting, asked Ms. Levin to clear up whether or not the 3-year contract is contingent upon, if the $3,000 a year is contingent upon us approving the contract for 3 years, and I believe she got clarification in the answer. I just asked her to wait so she'd only have to say it one time, so I'm asking that she provide that information.
Sure. I was able to quickly reach out to City Manager Mitchell. So this would approve the expenditure for the 3 years, so $3,000 per year, but you would be approving that it would be a commitment for 3 years. So it wouldn't be revisiting each year of those 3 years. It'd be you'd be committing to 3 years to provide $3,000
Per year for 3 years.
correct.
So and we know, I guess there's a plan, because I was in one of the 2 meetings, but the plan is to have the county have that up and running within 3 years.
That's my understanding.
Okay. And this would just be, the request is to have it budgeted each year.
Correct.
Okay.
$3,000 per year.
Okay. Is there any other discussion from council? Councilmember Brown.
Thank you. I just have a question. So if another option, just say hypothetically, comes up between now and the next 3 years, and say in the 3rd year, council wishes to explore another avenue, we're locked in by contract, Attorney Harkness?
guess my answer to you would be, without seeing it, I can tell you what we're obligated.
So,
Councilman Brown.
I mean, if we have a contract that's a 3-year term, unless there's an out clause in it, yeah, we'd be committed for 3 years, unless we have some sort of, sometimes we have standard contracts that'll say 90-day notice from either party to get out, or 30-day notice. I mean, if we have something like that built in, we could exercise that, but absent that clause, yes, we would be in it for 3 years.
Councilman Brown.
thank you, Mayor. So my next question is, does a contract actually exist? And, if so, I would believe that you would have at least seen it?
I don't think I've seen this particular one. I believe we've done an intergovernmental agreement in the past, but I don't recall seeing the Albion Marshall Connector agreement for 18 to 2020.
Okay, Councilman Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. One last question, I think. So, is this a time-sensitive resolution? Does this need to be voted on like tonight?
I think we've, Councilmember French.
I was gonna say, we want this agreement to start this year. So,
Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I do understand that we want the agreement to start this year, but I think it would be beneficial to council to know exactly what that agreement is. If there's a contract, at least Attorney Harkness should have seen it. I'm not saying that I don't agree to this. I'm just saying if we're gonna agree to something, we need to know exactly what we're agreeing to. It's just what I think. So my question is, does this have to be voted on tonight?
Go ahead.
I guess what I can offer is our manager just messaged me and said that the AMC, the connector contract was approved by council last year and should have been in the council packet, but. So I don't know.
Was that for, but that was for the, well, the amount that we, when we paid, when we gave, it was a 15,000? Okay, so that,
So we've done it in the past.
and we're covered for this year under that
yeah,
15,000. So I don't think if we waited for you to draft something or,
Approve or at least view something.
yeah, into the next meeting, if that's not, because we meet 2 weeks from now. Yeah. I was in the meetings. I think, it's obviously a good thing to have to not have to pay, $35,000, which we were doing. And we did speak up and say we wanted to lower that, but I do feel if there's no, time-sensitive issue, we could probably just do it the next meeting, so we'll actually have the documentation on it, if there's any objection to that, but.
whatever you need.
Yeah, I didn't see the resolution either.
And no contract.
Yeah, the only thing we have in our packet is the marijuana stuff.
Yeah, just the ordinance. For, yeah. So, I mean, just so we don't continue, because it's not time sensitive, I'm just gonna ask for a motion to table it or to postpone it into our next meeting and just put it on there, and hopefully we'll have, the details, because I'm sure it's going to be similar to the agreement that council approved for this year, but it would be helpful to have that.
So I move that we table this until our next council meeting.
Postpone until next meeting.
Postpone it, sorry.
Okay. Is there a second for that? Okay. Okay, so that fails. So again, I want to make sure that that we're being clear that if we do take a vote, it just seems like we're voting on something that was not in the packet, that we don't have a resolution or a contract for, so.
Yep.
Okay. Councilmember French.
Thank you. I think what we're experiencing here is what we've experienced in the past, in that there's a concern that the document is not before us, and therefore we don't trust the process without seeing the paperwork in our presence, right? We've agreed to a contract. You were at the meeting.
Yeah.
You approve of the principle in theory. So again, Councilwoman Brown's concerns are about some other entity. No other entity exists at this time. And so,
I think, I just want to clarify before, so that you don't kind of shade what I'm saying in a different way. I make it very clear. So I do support paying less than what we've been paying out of general fund. But what I'm saying is the process is to have documentation before us in the packet so we can read it
I
before we
understand.
vote on it.
That's my
So,
fault.
and it's, no, so, but I'm just.
I can send that out tomorrow.
Yeah, but I'm not, that's cool, but I'm just saying, the question that Councilmember Brown was asking was, if it was time sensitive. So when it comes, if I had that in front of me, I'm gonna vote yes to it. So unless
so
there's,
why can't you vote for it? Yes, now.
Point of order, Mayor, you have the
Councilmember
floor.
Brown,
Point of order.
yeah, okay. What I'm saying is, I'd like to at least be able to read what I'm voting on.
Okay.
I think that makes sense. If there's no further discussion, we'll have a roll call vote on a resolution we do not have.
Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
Brown,
No.
Lawler,
Yes.
French,
Yes.
and Mayor Brown.
No. Discussion solid waste, that was, oh, okay.
I see solid waste on the agenda this evening. I guess I need a little insight as to what you're looking at for this discussion topic.
When I asked for this, what I had in mind is that there's the solid waste fund, there's still, money in there. We've switched to single hauler. I know I had residents who were asking about what's happening to
Okay.
the remaining funds and how the city might use that for services.
My guess is because of the single hauler. And what I will tell you is there's several things that solid waste budget pays for. We have $7,000 every year for the recycling center. The summer cleanup, which normally runs $10,500 a year. It matches the tree trimming fund. Once that tree is on the ground, we can use solid waste to help offset the cost of taking care of that. So that's normally a 50-50 split. It pays for the dumpster service for the festivals, tree and limb pickup during storms, also a local match for county grants for house demolition. It also pays for the operation of the tree dump, the emergency removal of fire structures and uninsured structures, and trash removal from municipal buildings. What I will say is in 2016, it was a rather unusual high year for the leaf pickup. In that year, the leaf pickup equated to about 32% of the total solid waste budget. Overall, all the other things I've just mentioned made up the other 68%. 2017, we reduced that to about 28%, and for 2018, we have budgeted approximately 9.5%. So basically, since 2016, we've reduced it from 32% down to 9.5%.
Okay.
So
Okay. So then, in terms of, let's say those situations in which, leaves, I know we're not picking up leaves, but they end up in the street or in kind of, in front of the sewers, are we still,
we are dealing with it the best we can.
okay,
I'm certain that in the spring, we will see where some of those leaves ended back up
okay,
after snow plowing.
okay.
But what we've been able to do is get people out there to try to open up those catch basins so that we can have that free flow of water.
Okay. Are there any other questions from council? Okay, thank you. Okay. Item C, discussion 2018 local street repairs.
Council, in your package, you should have had City of Albion Street Project Summary. And it basically summarizes expenditures from 23 to 2017.
Is it in the back?
Should look like this.
It's right before the
Oh, right before the marijuana?
marijuana
Okay,
ordinance.
got it, thanks.
From 23 to 2017, we had 3 years, we basically completed no local streets projects, which were 2004, 2009, and 2012. My guess was, as indicated in the letter, that probably there was not funding available, or they were saving for future projects down the road, more costly projects. As for the 2018 street projects, if we remember, we have Irwin Avenue coming up in 2019. And we have been successful in getting a small urban grant in the amount of $375,000 put to this project.
So, one question about that. So is that, I know initially when we were considering doing that, it would have been half of Irwin, right? And then we applied to the ICE grant for the entire street, and we weren't awarded that grant. So now
Correct.
so are we going back to?
Correct. This is a different grant.
Okay, but is it
Through
for
the state.
for the whole street?
I'm sorry?
Is it for the whole street?
No, it would
Okay.
be from Finley Drive to Woodlawn,
Okay.
about half of it, basically. I recently got engineers' preliminary estimates, which came back at $1.6 million. That will include new water main and new sewer. That's the way we should do things, obviously. And whether we elect to go forward with that is quite another issue, but that's how I had it set up originally. I will say that after the $375,000 small urban grant, we are left with approximately $1.225 million our responsibility. So basically what I'm looking at is trying to make that work in 2019. If we decide if we elect not to do that project, then obviously we're gonna forfeit that $375,000 grant. So we're crunching numbers currently.
Is the grant tied to the water infrastructure, or is it just,
My understanding, it's tied to the street portion.
okay, so how, like, if we, and it's a conversation we're gonna, I guess, have eventually.
So what
but-
we're doing is, I sat down with Tom Mead today, the finance director, and we're trying to crunch some numbers and see where we can best allocate the funds from to make this work.
Or, I guess my question was, if, let's say we didn't do infrastructure, we didn't do the water mains and all that stuff,
Do we need them?
how much further could we, in terms of, distance, how much further could we go down the street, do you know?
It'll be the same area as the construction.
Okay. No,
My idea was to, obviously, down the road, complete Irwin Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
The reason we're looking at, especially the water main there, is because, as you remember, the USDA Rural Development Grant that we're going after for water, the potential new water tower, also includes a lot of water main work. And in that, the engineers have felt that if we encircle the city on our boundaries with larger diameter water main, that obviously will allow us to provide more flow, more pressure inside that boundary.
okay.
So that is part of this plan, potentially. So obviously, we're trying to crunch numbers and see what we can come up with to make certain that we don't have to forfeit on that $375,000 small urban grant. We've looked at a couple of different options here so far, and we're still trying to crunch the numbers. 2018, we may be able to pull off a small project, one of the local streets potentially. But what I will tell you in regards to that is, if you look at the summary sheet, I've done a summary by precinct and dollars spent in each precinct. And the way we've done it the last 3 or 4 years is to basically rotate those precincts by the dollar spent there, trying to keep it fair and equitable for the citizens across the community. As you can see, after this year's project, we have precinct 6, basically is the low end of the spectrum here. So if I do recommend some small project, it will probably be in precinct 6, unless council wants a different direction.
Councilmember Reed.
Mr. Mayor, I see precinct 2, and I see the amount of money there, but when I first got on council, I was talking to, at that time, Mr. Markovich, and it was a different group here, and they had told me that for years, 2 had not been worked in at all.
Right.
They had said that the council person then said that 2 was okay, don't do anything, and 2 was a mess. And so they managed to do some things in 2, but there's still more in 2 that, because of neglect for so many years, where things were
Right.
not done, has not gotten done.
Well, I understand, I do. If you drive around town, there's work to be done everywhere, and I think
Everywhere.
everybody knows
Yes,
that.
yes.
And I'm just trying to do, as I say, what's fair and equitable across the city, so that every precinct potentially gets somewhat of an equal share.
Yeah,
I think
I
it's
would
fair to
just-
the residents, and I think it's fair to your constituents.
yeah. I just want people who look at this and see how much has been spent into the reason why it was spent into.
Right.
Because for years, when other areas, precincts were being taken care of, nothing was being done into. So they were
I
kind of
understand.
trying to.
I get it. Thank you.
So, not your fault at all.
Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So in looking at the summary, and the breakdown by precincts, and the amount spent, I get that, but I think one thing that, we should consider is geographically, the sizes of these precincts, is tied to the money spent. So trust, I'm not taking anything away from Irwin Ave being fixed in 2019. It needs it. But I also have to point out that I noticed precinct 1 hasn't had any repairs since 2011. And that's like the longest out. I know it's showing $1 million has been spent, but since 2011, I mean, that's a large geographical area.
As I say, this has been my approach on it. If council wants a different direction, I would be more than happy to entertain suggestions, direction, whatever.
One question I do have, and piggybacking off of Councilmember Reed, I know when Director Markovich was here, there was a map of, I guess, an assessment had been done, and each of the streets were color-coded in terms of the severity of
There was a
deterioration. Are we still
it-
operating on that?
There was a street study done, I believe it was in 2008 or 9.
Okay.
It has not been brought up to date. One of the things I will say is part of the GIS system, that is my plan, to
Okay.
layer in the streets
Okay.
and get that in there, and get it up to date so that we can look and say, okay, these are where our bad streets are at, or the more severe streets that need repair, and have it up to date. I can't do it by memory, obviously. I could go out, I try to ride around and go, man, this street's terrible. Look at my list and say, okay, it's in whatever precinct. Should we spend the money there or should we not? So if, as I say, I'd be happy to entertain ideas,
Would it,
recommendations, direction.
yeah, would you,
What have you.
if the council members were able to, let's say, just send a message to the manager and say, hey, what about this street? Is that something we could at least get in terms of getting a perspective on how much it would cost to do a particular street?
Right, and I do have some engineers' estimates for
Okay.
a lot of the streets,
Okay.
but some of these are a little old, and they're costly to have done, so we don't get them done every year because of that. So you're beginning to, if they're 2 or 3 years old, you're gonna have to start adding in additional costs, because
Okay.
obviously your pricing's going up.
Okay. Councilmember French.
Thank you, Mayor. Do you have a rough ballpark how much we get in the budget for local street?
I do not know what we budgeted this year right off the top of my head.
Do you know how much a little project would be, to kind of build equity toward Irwin Avenue? Because personally, Irwin Avenue needs to be done. We can do it just a little bit quicker if we make that small project even smaller.
And that's one of the other things that I'm looking at as a consideration is potentially a assessment, localized assessment to help offset the costs for the city. I haven't, at this point, sat down and talked with Tom about it, but we will do the research, see what we think it may take money-wise to do that.
You're talking about a special assessment?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Councilmember Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. By looking at the summary, where I see, like, Councilmember Brown spoke about, it's been like 7 years since Precinct 1. And we have had a couple complaints about, at least 3 or 4 streets over there in that area. And I do understand that Irwin Ave does need to be done, but if it's their turn to get something done there, we need to do something.
Yeah.
Because it is really, really bad over there.
I was being a little bit more subtle. I was saying, basically, there's a resident there on 2nd Street.
And I understand, I get that, but there again, in all fairness, I don't think there's a precinct here that doesn't have at least 2 or 3 streets
Yeah.
that really need repair.
Exactly. Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So I don't even know if you can answer this question, but the ICE grant that we applied for before and we did not get,
Correct.
do you know if there's an opportunity for that grant to be available again?
I am actually talking with the engineers about that currently, about reapplying for that.
Okay,
We have to get some ducks in a row, for lack of better terms, to do that.
okay.
It's based on points. And if you have this going on in your community or this going on, you're awarded points for that. And obviously, the higher point takes the money. One of those things is the community, redevelopment-ready community. And I've actually spoke with Cheryl about it, and I know they're working on some zoning issues currently. I think we can apply for that any time of the year, and I'm hoping maybe by fall that we, let's just say, have a little more of those points going in our direction. Maybe we'll get lucky.
Councilmember Brown.
Thank you. So there's a possibility that that grant funding may be available for this Irwin Ave project that we're,
It may.
okay,
But
Okay.
there again, as you already stated, we have applied for it once, and
Right.
we weren't awarded enough points to be eligible, so.
thank you.
Councilmember Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. Are we able to get a study of, once we get all our ducks in a row, to see how much it will cost, or how much we have, and to see how much it will cost for Irwin and some of the streets over in Precinct 1, like 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Street? I'm just gonna throw.
We can do that. We can do that.
Okay.
That's not an issue. As I said earlier, we do have some engineers' estimates. Some of them are a couple of years old.
Okay.
And actually, 1st Street, 2nd Street, I think Wild, maybe 3rd Street might be on there, but some of those streets in that area up there, I do have estimates for.
Okay.
They're a few years old, so we're gonna have to obviously jack that price up, so.
Okay. Are there any other questions from council on this item? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to D, discussion approval amendment to council rules of procedure. At our last meeting, we had discussed adding kind of language for consultation, mayor and manager, and wanted to take that up. I know the manager's not here this evening, but have a discussion about that so we can see what we want to do in regards to that. I think that for those who haven't watched it, I think that the meeting on the 11th was excellent, and Attorney Smith did a great job of explaining what the roles are in terms of mayor, council members, and the manager. And so one of the things that he mentioned and also what Councilmember Lawler had mentioned, is lots of communities have mostly informal ways of having the mayor and manager meet and talk and keep each other in the loop about what's going on. And so, because we're doing council rules, I thought it'd be a good idea to try to incorporate that. And so I think one of the concerns that I've heard about is how detailed those requirements should be in terms of when, what time, how often. So I just want to get a sense of what council feels about that. I know that every year in the fall, we approve a resolution for future regular session meetings for the upcoming year. So maybe including that in that resolution as well could be a component of that. So, Councilmember Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. The reason for, what I had, the language that I had requested for is just to, make sure that, our, manager and city mayor are communicating. How you communicate is fine with me, but if you could provide like some dates for yourself or some time for yourself, and if one couldn't make it, you know, just long as everybody agreed that, okay, well, since we can't do it Monday, let's try to do it Tuesday, you know, just to make sure that you guys are, not you guys, I'm sorry, just make sure that the relationship with the manager and the city manager, just is there, you know, that you conversate and with one another, and because I just feel like if there's a breakdown in communication, some things will be left undone or something of the sort. So I just want us to just make sure you have meeting dates, and then when it's time to present something to the council, then present it.
Okay. Councilmember French.
Thank you, Mayor. I prefer to err on less structure, but an expectation. An expectation that the mayor and the manager will meet in advance of every regular council meeting to discuss agenda, to inform the mayor on what's going on, so that the mayor can represent the city in all of his or her actions in the public. Remember, our attorney basically said, and our charter says, that the mayor is informed by the city manager and going on what's going on, so he can or she can communicate with the public with information that is up to date, and that just makes that relationship with the public better. So I would encourage before every regular council meeting, so twice a month, but I don't want to say that the mayor will meet on the Monday before a council meeting or the Wednesday before a council meeting. That restrictive language doesn't allow for flexibility in the busyness of both the mayor and the manager and their busy lives and schedules. So I would just prefer to say that the mayor shall meet with the council, the mayor shall meet with the city manager in advance of each council meeting.
Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So my thought is that after Dr. Mitchell feels better, her and Mayor Brown have a discussion and let the two of them come up with what they think would be the most productive way to go about implementing this resolution by council. So.
Councilmember Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. That will be okay with me, just for you to give me your word. Word is your bond. So if you can work it out together, that will be fine. But if it doesn't happen, I'd like to come back to the resolution.
Well, yeah, I err on the side of documentation, you know, and it's not just for us, it's for council members in the future who follow us, so that they have a sense of kind of what went on and what were, and I hate this word, but best practices. So I'm sure we can work that out. I'm not opposed to what Councilmember French actually just articulate it, saying either before every regular meeting or even a weekly thing, in whatever form that takes. That could be a phone call, in person, whatever duration. But, I know it is helpful in terms of setting the agenda and those kinds of things. So I don't have a problem with it being that open. I just want it to be in the rules. So, Councilmember French and Councilmember
I would
Brown.
err on the side of face-to-face rather than over the phone, just as a principle.
I have no problem. Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So, in addition to the resolution that we're discussing, Councilmember French mentioned Attorney Smith's visit and what he shared with us as far as our roles. I would like to see, I know he gave us a great outline and he gave us great information. I would like to see those roles be included in our council rules and procedures.
Okay. I can, we have the PowerPoint, right, so I can.
Yeah, because what I was going to recommend is, let's see, that could, I'm just brainstorming how that could be incorporated, but I think that's something we can do. Maybe it could be a resolution, and we just put it as a, like an appendix. Councilmember French.
As I recall, there's a section on council members and on the mayor.
In the manager.
In the very beginning, the authority and everything.
Mm-hmm.
If I just expand those sections with those duties as we
Yeah.
do the three of us, I'm sorry, I'm probably speaking out of turn, do the three of us want to get together and sort of carve that out like we did last time?
Have no problem with
I
that.
don't
That's
have
fine
a
with
problem
council.
with that.
Okay, let's do that. So after this meeting, we can try to find a meeting, we can
Exactly.
do that? Okay, and then if it's not the first meeting in February,
Probably
that
second.
seems like a quick try, we might be able to get it done by then, but,
Yeah.
given the new rules that we have, right, so we need it the Monday before the Monday, so, let's just plan on aiming for the second meeting in February, so we'll exist under the existing new council rules until, what is it, the 18th or the
Yeah.
19th of February, that is the second meeting in February.
That works.
Well, the 19th is actually President's Day, so.
So maybe the Tuesday.
So it'd be the 20th?
Mhm.
Okay,
Okay.
so let's, don't
Well-
let me forget, because I tend to forget.
Yes.
Let's,
We'll do that after the
I'm
meeting.
not, I own that, Councilman. Okay.
Are there any other discussion or any other comments on this item? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to item E, discussion of ordinance number 2018-01, medical marijuana ordinance. Attorney Harkness.
So, we made several changes, that we discussed, that I went over with the council at the last meeting, but really, let me say this. I get probably 3 to 5 emails a day from various municipal attorneys going back and forth about each municipality's marijuana ordinance, and the evolving administrative rules from the state. So I mean, this is gonna get changed more than once before it finally settles, but, so ultimately I'll probably end up building in a severability clause at the end of this, but what the council really needs to, give me some direction on tonight is, we need to land on the location of the facilities that you've authorized relative to schools, parks, places of religious worship. We're gonna take the fence portion out and leave that for, well, I should say, the specifics of the fencing, leave that to the planning commission.
And that comes back to us.
Yes, yeah, we'll
Anyway.
let them hammer out the specifics on that, but, really, I just need to know distances from parks, schools, places of religious worship. There had been, when we first talked about school, and, I think you can probably take this piecemeal, when we first talked about school, we had said 500 feet, that's what we had, and then when we talked about public parks and, fencing, and the problem there is it wasn't really clear. Does that mean it can't be within 250 feet? They have to be, at 250 feet, is that when the fencing kicks in? So my suggestion would be either establish a minimum distance that they have to be from those facilities, or do like a high and a low, saying, okay, for example, you can't be any closer than 250 feet. But if you're going to be with, say, for example, if you're within 500 feet, you have to have a fence. If you're outside of 500 feet, you don't have to have a fence. I mean, there's any variety of ways you can do it. I just need some direction on distances and where you want the fence thing to kick in.
I recall, and I'm going to go to Councilmember French, I think anything 200 feet and less would be barred.
250 feet.
250 feet. And then, I think, was it between 250 and 500 or 250 and 1,000 that you had to have a fence? Councilmember French.
So I talked by email and personally with two potential grower or marijuana operators since our last meeting. And both of them said that regardless of proximity, they would put a fence around their property. It just makes good security sense. So I don't think that the fencing will be as much of an issue. We can put it in, of course, but I'm just saying that and I recall that we were saying 1,000 feet from a school.
I think you said,
Or do we go 500? Do we
I
bring it
believe
back
you
up?
changed to 500.
Okay, so 500 for a school,
yeah.
and then 250 for everything else. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's where we were last time, but the one concern I had was just because the Opportunity School, the high school, has the athletic fields behind it.
Mm-hmm.
This is from, basically,
Yeah.
this is not from buildings, this is from the actual property. So that basically would probably eat up a portion of is it B1? B3. In the northern portion of town. So, and then it wouldn't affect, let's say, Harrington, because that's not in the zone, there's no zone over there that we approved. I propose just saying 250 for everything. You know. Councilmember French.
Thanks. I voted no for an awful lot of this, so maybe that means that my voice doesn't really matter, but in this, because I'm okay with not having anything up on B Drive. Absolutely fine with nothing on Eaton Street North, for the simple fact that a significant portion of our population is not in favor of this. So I'm not saying it's a majority, but I'm just saying a significant portion of it. And so public knowledge.
Do you have data for that?
Do I have data for that?
To say that?
So I will rephrase. A significant number of members of my precinct, which I do have data for, are opposed to any and all marijuana operations in the city. That's not the will of the council and of other precincts, so I respect that. But I personally would be okay with marijuana facilities in the industrial park. I said so at council meetings, so I'm perfectly fine with the 500 feet by a school, even if it does eat into the east side of B Drive. I think we were in agreement that a church was 250. And so we know potentially of attempts of some church to buy property on the west side of Eaton Street by the highway, but to my knowledge, that hasn't happened yet. So the question is that, if a developer wishing to put a facility there.
Actually, that's actually an interesting question. So if someone were to build a facility and then another church or something opened, like what?
It'd be a prior non-conforming use, or pre-existing non-conforming use.
Okay, so there'd be no.
You couldn't kick them out if the
Okay.
church was.
Now, that being said, when your license comes up for renewal, you can say, we're not gonna renew your license, we want you to relocate, but, I mean, I think you're gonna have a tough time
Okay.
justifying that.
Okay. John, Director Tracy, can you give a sense of, because we don't have the,
Yeah, our zoning map's not there.
it's downstairs, but how much land are we using if we keep the 500 with the schools over there? Because I know there's, the medical offices are over there, and
Well, you're probably looking, John Tracy, Director of Planning, Building and Code Enforcement. On B Drive, you're probably looking at, from the Super 9 down to 500, you're probably looking, getting close to, actually Eaton Street,
so just it eats up that whole.
pretty much, I would say,
Okay.
500 foot, because the property for the school runs right up and abuts those properties off of B Drive, so
Okay.
it would pretty much take it in. All of it, like I say, until you get to Eaton Street.
Okay, so basically, the motel, the dialysis center,
Hotel,
the medical,
dialysis, the
the restaurant.
restaurant, correct.
Okay. Okay. Council? Do we? Yeah, we need a idea of what, Councilmember French?
So the council voted 500 and 250. So I think that's where we stand. Colin, is that?
I don't know that the council voted, but I know that the council definitely discussed 500 and 250, and so what you had left with the last time we had an in-depth discussion about this, not this past Thursday, but the previous regular meeting, was that you had indicated to me 500 feet from schools, and then you had said the 250, but the 250 reference was kind of ambiguous, so I wanted clarification. So is the consensus from council definitely nothing within 250 feet? And then if it's within a certain distance, say if it's within 500 feet, it has to have a fence as well? I mean, they can obviously elect to have a fence if they're further away, but I guess the question is, are we saying 250 feet for churches and parks and things of that nature, and then if they're within a certain distance above that, require a fence?
Yeah, yes. So,
Okay, so what is that distance, 500 feet, 1,000 feet?
I'd say 500.
5 for a fence.
And that is all I need.
So we're staying with the 500 with,
I'm gonna bring this, so what I've got then is 500, nothing shall be located within 500 feet of any real property comprising a public or private, elementary, licensed childcare facility, vocational or secondary school. None of those facilities shall be located within 250 feet of any property comprising a public park. Any of those facilities located more than 250 feet but less than 500 feet of property comprising a public park shall be surrounded by a fence as required by city ordinance. And same thing for places of religious worship.
one other question.
What was that last part? Same?
The same thing for places of religious worship, nothing within 250 feet.
Right.
Anything within 500 has to
Right.
have a fence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on that, or do you need anything else?
That should be it,
Okay.
barring a new development in the law in the next 2 weeks, which is entirely possible.
Okay. Okay, item F, discussion of snow removal and street conditions.
Seems to be my night at the podium.
Yeah.
Welcome back, Jim.
First of all, having fielded several citizens' complaints, let's say, about our recent snow removal program, and a concern addressed by Councilman Brown, I would like to kind of give you an oversight, I guess, if you will, of how our plowing program works. First and foremost, we are responsible for the removal of snow on the MDOT trunk lines, which is obviously M99 and Business Loop I-94 within the confines of the city. So obviously those are going to be our first areas that we open up. After that, we are going to move down to the longer streets within our community, our local streets, that have the ability to move people across town or get them to those major MDOT trunk lines based on potential traffic volume. So what that equates to is once we get those done, then we begin to move on to the shorter, smaller streets. It may take us a while. If we have an extended, heavy snow event, and we feel we need to go back and open those trunk lines back up, we're gonna have to do that first before we get down into some of the smaller local streets. When the drivers go out, they each have an assigned route, and that's the priority that they use. Those streets that have the potential for the most heavily driven areas, and then they move to the smaller streets. I know that's not always popular, but that's the way that we've done things historically, and I think probably based on vehicular traffic, that's the way we need to continue to do things. That being said, the most recent snowfalls, we were plagued by a couple of different issues. One is that we had 3 plow trucks out of service at the very same time. We had a rear end go out of one. Another one had a brake issue, and I want to say the other one was a brake / something else issue. Those are all back in service. We did the repairs ourselves, even the rear end. The other issue that seems to be hitting us not only in the Department of Public Services, but citywide now is illness. We've had a fair amount of people out with illness too. So hopefully things will get better, but I did want the public to understand how we concentrate and why we do what we do. So if you live on a 1 or 2 block street, it's probably gonna be, or a dead end, it's probably gonna be a while before we get there. So we'll do it as quickly as we can, and we'll do our best to please everybody, but we have a protocol that we're gonna follow.
Councilman Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So I want to thank you for that information, because, you know, I had received some complaints, and I know even on my street one night, I heard the truck out there about 9 p.m., and I thought that was the oddest thing, because that's never happened before. So I knew that something was going on, I just wasn't sure what it was. But hearing you explain this, I mean, it's understandable and it makes sense. So I thank you for the information and the communication. I think anyone in the public can understand this, but it's just the knowing that this is going on.
Right, and I
that
understand.
people need to
I do understand.
So thank you.
And note to self, I will try to be more cognizant about getting the word out there, whether it's in the newsletter or something on the website that says, you know, please bear with us, we've got 3 trucks out of service, or whatever the case may be. So maybe that'll lessen the phone calls for all of us.
But one of the questions that I was asked was regarding, I guess, when people put the trash cans out, and the trucks going by, like, how do we handle that? If they're knocked down, is that?
Well, I guess the first thought that comes to my head is we have basically 100 miles of streets to plow in this town.
Yeah.
We have 50 miles, but obviously they need to be plowed both ways.
Yeah.
We have X amount of time to do that. If I slow those plows down so they're not knocking garbage cans over, we're gonna have a lot more complaints than we're getting now.
Okay. Okay.
Try to be on top of it and
Okay.
maybe set them a little further back from the
Okay.
edge of the road, but
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Are there any other questions from council? Okay. Thank you. Oh, Councilman French.
thank you.
I'm not done with you, Jim.
Oh, sorry.
How many plow trucks do we have?
Currently, I believe we have 5 in service,
5 in service.
I believe. Who knows what tomorrow may bring?
Yeah, I just wanted to give people the perspective that 3 down is only
Exactly.
2 online, which is
And then you,
significant, so.
and then you couple that with the idea that you may have 2 plow truck operators off sick, or 3 plow truck operators out sick, and it definitely puts a damper on the situation. It slows things down,
Yeah.
so,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay. Council, agenda item G, request approval color, logo for water tower. Councilman French.
Thank you, Mayor. Before you is a
Oh, wait, are we approving? There's I want to say there's a deadline.
Friday.
Yeah, so we need to have a motion. A motion. We have a motion to approve something. A design. I mean,
Color and logo.
I need a motion so we can
Oh,
discuss.
so moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Moved and
Sorry, I
seconded.
was confused.
Councilman French.
I apologize, Mayor. What you have before you, I asked Albion College's graphic designer to come up with 3 possible scenarios. By no means are these the only possibilities. She recommended that we maintain the blue. She also suggested strongly that we not use a logo, just because its size and the curvature of the thing, it's a waste of space and potentially cost. So she just came up with these 3 fonts. Again, this is not laid in stone in any way. We could change it as we wish. But I just wanted the council to have something to look at, so as we are thinking about what, when we make a decision about color, I can pass that. Actually, I have 6 or 7 here.
Here are 2 extras here.
Okay. So what, I'll jump in and say when, in conversation with the city manager and Mickey Bittinger, who's the city engineer, one of the things, and I think I mentioned this at the last meeting, from our previous discussion, it seems like council is open to the idea of doing the $1 million, excuse me, not $1 million, excuse me, the 1 million gallon.
Only,
Yeah, if only it was $1 million. $1 million. The 1 million gallon water tower, potentially near the 425 section that we own with Sheridan Township. And so, as I believe his name is Ira presented at the last meeting, that has opportunities for, if we want to do logos or different kinds of graphics. What I mentioned to them is, and I'm happy that the graphic designer agreed, is that, if, as much as possible, I thought it'd be neat if we could maintain what was historically there, because it's pretty iconic. I know Miss Lanou, when she draws cityscapes, it's there. But then also there was a concern raised about the mildew discoloration and having to deal with that. So if we could, I think maybe we can kind of go through a series of steps here, like we did with the marijuana ordinance, to kind of speed this up. So is there anyone who disagrees with some hue of blue? Another color than blue? I mean, is anyone, okay, so we're set with the blue, okay. The next part is, I guess, the dual color blue, right? So there's one, it's kind of 3 shades. Here's like maintaining the light blue on top, and then like the middle blue. I'm starting on the one on the left, or excuse me, the right. Then you have,
Option 3.
oh, which,
it's in real small print on
oh, yeah, okay, yeah, thank you. I didn't even see that. I need a new prescription here. So, yeah, option 3, so it kind of, to me, it seems like it maintains the blue we have on top and then a darker blue. Then option 2 is, it's still dual, but it's just darker. Do we have any kind of sense, the one thing though, I'm not sure about is the whole City of Albion thing? I mean, just by, and do we happen to know what typeface is up there right now?
Well, it's interesting you ask because I was looking at these three and they all have, well, one is script or cursive. The other two have serifs. And I don't believe or recall that the one that's up now has serifs on the font. So if you look at option 2 and 3, you could see, by serif I mean those little lines that's at the top or bottom of the letters.
Yeah.
And I don't recall that on our current water tower, so that's something to consider in terms of font. I don't know does that have to be determined by Friday as well? Okay.
Well, actually,
So, does it, oh, it has.
Slight.
It's very, oh yeah, it is.
okay.
Yeah, it's got slight serif. So would you say, I would say actually option 2 and 3 don't look like, this looks like copper plate font on the right. And option 2 looks like it doesn't quite match what's currently there. So that would be something you'd need to determine.
Well, I don't know what the type we have, or the typeface we have right now. Huh?
I think it's just block done, I don't think it was.
And I think block is better than.
Okay. But,
There's, it almost looks like that the one that's currently there is a simpler type font. These look a little more embellished, so it's just something to consider as you're coming up with a decision.
so, I guess, so, I'll jump to an easier, before we go back to that, so let's jump to, do we want to have City of Albion, or do we want to maintain just Albion?
Albion.
Councilman French?
The graphic designer in my conversation with her yesterday, or sorry, Friday, was that she, in her survey of what was out there, most cities, in her opinion, felt like City of Albion, the city of was present more often than just the name. It's small. It wouldn't add necessarily to the cost. We were told that at our last meeting. But again, that's her opinion.
So, I would not,
And I think her attempt for option 3 was a commercial available font that you can have electronically that comes close to what the historical font looks like.
the interest,
Just the tiny little serifs on it, not.
the interesting thing is actually in option 2, the City of part, even though it's tiny, that's actually sans serif. You know, so that would actually be the block that we're talking about. It's just so small, but, did you?
Yeah, I agree. And it also looks like the letters, I'm just looking at a picture just online of the tower, water tower, and it looks like the letters are spaced. I mean, obviously, this is just a quick rendering that the graphic designer came up with, but the letters have a certain spacing, so it doesn't look so bunched exactly together. So there's a little more space, but
Yeah, I think that's also.
I think that could be worked out.
She was trying to render it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, just so that you could be able to see it, but,
I think one of the things, I'm more in favor of just maintaining, just saying Albion. But is there any other, Councilmember Brown?
Thank you, Mayor. So I agree. I'm in favor of it reading Albion, just as it is, what we've always seen it to be. I also support the two-tone, just because of the mildew issue, at the bottom, and it looks really gross, with the mildew. But I do have a question, like the font, it's not gonna be white. Is there any way to make that font the same color as that two-tone?
We could do whatever we want.
Okay, I
But-
didn't know,
But I
okay,
think,
She was just trying to provide something slightly different,
okay,
maybe a little more modern looking,
okay.
but, you know.
and I, I'm cognizant of tonight's meeting and all of that, but I do know that that there is a deadline, which is
Friday.
it is Friday, so we
Friday.
do have to kind of talk about this now, unless we want to have a special meeting.
Well, that's-
So the sense I get is that we're okay with two-tone. We're okay with some,
Option 3 color.
well, I'm getting to that. So we're okay with two-tone. We're okay with a font that is block, but can we do the sans serif? Which is,
Do whatever you want.
okay, but we have to make that decision. Okay, when I say sans serif, it's basically, if you, like you said, like if you look in option 2 where it says city of, even though it's tiny, there's no points or things at the ends of the letters.
So,
Oh, that's a good one, okay. So,
So,
yeah, can you,
I'm
can
trying
you,
to get a good angle.
can you pass that around? This is not our Albion, but.
This is it's a picture of a different Albion community, and they have a water tower with that kind of block lettering that the mayor's referring to.
So that's sans serif.
Yeah. I like the original one better. I like the serifs personally.
Well, I guess my other question is, and we can put this out there, if they can find whatever typeface we have right now, would we be interested in just keeping that? Would there be an objection to that?
looks like to me, I'm sorry,
Councilmember Brown?
I apologize, Mayor, thank you. It looks to me like what we have now mirrors option 3.
A little bit.
The A is different.
Yes,
than that.
yeah,
Oh, you're right.
Option 3 is
You're
copper
right.
plate.
You're right.
yeah. So, but is that something that we can give them instruction to, is get a font, a typeface as close to what we have right now as possible? Is there any objection to that? Okay, so we know we'll do two-tone, we know we'll keep the typeface as close to what we have as possible right now. The city of, or just Albion?
Albion.
Is there, Councilmember Brown and French?
Thank you, Mayor. Albion.
Okay, Councilmember Reed, I don't know, I don't want to take
Don't have
a preference. Okay, Councilmember Lawler, do you have a,
does not matter.
Councilmember French?
I'm not gonna, I mean, I prefer City of Albion, but
Okay.
that's because it then is a spot, but
Okay.
it's not worth a fight over, so.
Okay.
Why not?
Okay. Okay, so just to summarize, we know we're gonna do two-tone, we're gonna keep the typeface as close as possible to what we have, what's been there historically. We'll just go with the Albion. Now, I guess the final point is the two colors.
Right.
And what's, Councilman French?
So you had said earlier that the lettering should be the same color as the
Well, that's what we're
second tone?
Well, that's what Councilmember
Oh, you said-
Brown suggested. So what we need to do is we need to decide, and really, I kind of think there's a hidden fourth option there, like, you know, an option 2 is just do the whole thing in the dark blue.
I like dark blue.
But I don't know how, the thing is, I don't know how dark,
Blue or purple?
But I don't like the.
well, I mean, what I'm saying is the base of that is a darker blue.
Dark blue, that's what I
Okay.
thought you said purple.
So Councilmember Reed and Councilmember Brown.
Okay, this is gonna be up there in the park where it is now,
Yes, ma'am.
next to where the church is.
Yes.
I think the light, the light blue tends to match better, I would think in that setting than that dark blue is going to be.
Councilmember Brown and then French.
Thank you, Mayor. So, like, I don't feel really strongly one way or the other about the blue, as long as it's blue. I like the dark blue. I don't like the white lettering, though. So, I think I'm leaning more toward a lighter blue at the top with a darker two-tone. Yeah, that's what
So-
I'm leaning toward.
Councilmember French.
So if we went with the bottom from option 2 and kind of a sky blue for the top with the dark blue lettering. Right, because I got the feeling that the original blue was supposed to be like the sky, and that it's now 60 years old, so it looks less like the sky. But if we went with a sky blue on the top and then something dark enough to hide the mildew, I'm worried that the option 3 that we've given is not dark enough to hide the mildew.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And so the one in the middle might be dark enough to hide the mildew.
That's a good point.
But then that would be a dark enough blue that would contrast with the sky blue
Well,
to make
so
it
bef- well-
look like it.
well, before we do that, let's say, do we want to have typeface, the typeface in, white or to match the base color?
She doesn't like the white, so I'm good with not having the white.
It's just my opinion, though.
You're the one that,
Is there any other opinion about that?
I don't have an opinion about it.
Okay.
Do you have an opinion?
I have no opinion either way, but
Y'all don't have an opinion?
you have opinion? Okay, one second. We just wanna keep this
I
organized.
do.
Assistant City Manager, just 1 second.
Okay, so it appears that there are some folks who are interested in keeping the historical integrity of the water towers, is what I'm getting a sense of. So just a suggestion, what if the water tower color, given in its newest form, right, so we understand there's some weather damage and whatnot, for the main part of the tower, and the bottom base would be a darker blue, and then you could have the lettering match that base darker blue. And then, but you want to try to match the existing blues as close as possible.
The question I have, so I'm looking at an image of the tower, the hue of blue that the typeface is in currently, is that dark enough to cover the mildew?
It's a good question. You might have to go darker. It's funny because the picture that you have, Mayor, you could see that the letters are actually fading. I mean, it's from age. It's really hard to tell. So I would recommend, picking a hue that contrasts enough with your back color, because you want the Albion to pop. That's the whole point. And then make sure you match those, that lettering with the blue of your base. I think it would be too busy if you had 3 shades of blue, quite frankly. So I think you would, whatever color you determine for the typeface should match the base blue.
Okay, so I'll summarize. I think we've reached a consensus here. So something similar to option 3. The only difference is there would be no city of, the Albion text would match the base, and then we would just have to determine how dark the base color would be. And I'm sure that that's something that, they can come back to us and say, I'm sure we can see some.
Yeah, because when you start dealing with a company that's actually got
Yeah.
paint, it's gonna be different than
Yeah,
this.
Councilmember French.
I think, as I recall from our meeting last week, what they were asking for is for our decisions in the realm,
Okay,
like whether it was gonna be two-tone or one,
yeah.
and how many colors was it gonna be, if it was gonna have a logo or not. I mean, those are all things that will go into the
Yeah.
RFP. I think we probably have enough to.
Okay. So is that, have we been specific enough for, okay. Okay, so we've done that. Are there any future agenda items? Councilmember Brown.
We didn't vote.
Oh, you're right. Thank you.
Sorry.
Seeing no further discussion, we'll have a roll call vote.
Actually, we should probably finalize what we decide.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. So basically, I'll repeat it again. So something similar to option 3, but just in terms of, there'd be no city of would be removed. The text Albion would be in the same, match the color of the base. And we would, the color of the darker hue of blue is pending what the contractor would say would work best.
To hide the mold.
To hide the mold. Oh, and the typeface, yes, and the typeface will remain what we have as close as possible.
So what color are you making the top?
The-
Sky blue, okay, that's
Yeah.
right.
Or, yeah, it's similar to what we have,
Yeah.
basically. The whole point is to try to keep, if we could keep it the same and had some way to deal with the mildew, I'd suggest that. Okay, is everyone clear about what we're supporting or going to vote on? Okay. Roll call vote, please. Thank you.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes,
French,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
and Mayor Brown.
Yes. Future agenda items. Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. The council goal setting session we need to figure out a time to do that coming up. Also, I actually would like to entertain, Mr. Passick's suggestion as far as, council considering the adoption of a resolution that speaks to Superior Street. Not that we have the final say, because it's the state, owned, road, but I think, considering the issues, and I've heard that sentiment from other residents as well, I think it's something that council should at least look at discussing for possible adoption of a resolution.
Okay. Is that? Yeah?
Yes,
Okay.
sorry.
Are there any other future agenda items? Okay. I received communication from Councilmember Spicer. She's ill, and I talked to the manager, and she stated that Councilmember Barnes had stated that he would be wouldn't be able to attend. So, is there a motion to excuse absent council members?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Okay. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Okay. Public comments. Persons addressing the city council shall limit their comments to no more than 3 minutes. We ask that you observe proper decorum, and please state your name and address. Thank you.
Loretta Weeks, 917 Luther Drive. Just to add to, you were talking about different precincts when they have had something done. I texted Nadia because she's well aware of what goes on in the precincts, and she says that Irwin Avenue has not been touched since 1974. Just for your information, because you were talking about precinct 1, precinct 2, precinct 3 that needs something. And no one mentioned Irwin Avenue other than it needs to be done. And she says that nothing's been done since 74, and I can't back that up.
I can talk to you after that.
Okay.
Also, I just wanted to mention that on the Albion Marshall communicator, connection? Connector. On the 3-year, $3,000 for 3 years, Brown asked if you were held to those 3 years. I would think that the city council would know that.
You didn't?
I know, you don't have a
Okay.
contract.
Yes.
Why don't you have a contract? That's what I'm saying. If you brought it up, you should be ready to vote on it, because you're gonna prolong it another council meeting, is what I'm saying. I understand your point.
I can talk. I apologize.
So, and according to the plowing, when we first moved up on Luther Drive, when we had a snow, the snow plows, you could count on it, were there at 3 o'clock in the morning doing our street. Now, I don't know what's changed, if you have fewer people working, or if we have more snow, or if we have more sick people, or if we have more breakdowns, but you could count on our subdivision being cleaned when there was a snow, because they did it at 3 o'clock in the morning. Just for information.
Thank you.
Alfreda Dysart Drake, 1016 South Superior Street. My question is in regards to the medical marijuana, and and I'm not sure, I guess my question is, does anyone know how many feet it is? Someone mentioned the industrial park, from the industrial park to right there in the city where you've got churches that are located. And that would be my concern, that you all put, I think, 500 feet within schools and what have you, but I think for religious buildings, as far as churches, that's important too. And so right there on the very end of the, if it were to go in the industrial park, you've got Mount Calvary Church, you've got the Orthodox Church there, you've got Leggett Chapel, you've got Macedonian Grace Temple. Those churches are right there on the tail end of the city. And I would personally have a concern, and I would think that if you can put 500 feet from a school, that certainly can be from a church also. So I would just ask the council to consider that, because I'm not sure how many feet it is from the industrial park to there, but you've got a number of churches that are in that area on the outside of, right at the city limits there. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further public comments this evening?
Andrew Texel, 1112 East Porter, one of the AmeriCorps Vistas in City Hall. We just had the financial empowerment fair that was talked about at the beginning of the meeting, that Linda Lanou and the Vistas worked on. It was great. We have another couple events coming up in February that are going to be put on by the Southwest Michigan Community Development Corporation related to credit. So all things credit related. The first event is going to be February 13th at 1 p.m. at the Charles Snyder Building, and the second event on February 22nd at 5:30 in the Naomi Lane Room on the second floor of the Albion District Library. I forgot to bring these flyers up before the meeting, but they're here right now. I can hand them out to any of the council members who might want them. And so, yeah, those are a couple events coming up, so just wanted to make you aware. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment this evening? Okay. Councilmember Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to address some of the things that were discussed at the Albion Marshall Connector meeting. I've been at that meeting twice now, and from my understanding, it's $3,000 per year. I know we don't have a resolution like in front of us, but I do trust and believe that our city clerk will get it to us. So that is why I was confident in voting for this resolution. So I didn't see, from my perspective, anything that would contradict us spending the $3,000 per year. And I just want to thank the city manager for not only by herself, but with some other people that she invited to the table for to be at this meeting for the Albion Marshall Connector, and we did find 10 people that were willing to commit $3,000. So it's not all on us, but like I said, I did attend the meeting.
Okay. Seeing no further, Councilmember Brown.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Support.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Cullen. The Albion Marshall resolution didn't pass. I just thought about something.